Welcome to Board Game Publisher. One of the first steps in the publication of a board game is to bring the prototype of the designer to a state where you can actually send it to the manufacturer. The first part is development. For the development, it's very similar and intertwined with the whole game design aspect, of course, but there are some things that are very specific to the board game publisher that you have to be careful about. So the very first thing to do is to make a contract with your game designer so that you can make sure that your rights and obligation and the rights and obligation of the designer are clear and are protected. That's a very important first step. Once you have an agreement on how you will work together, and that agreement is put on a contract and signed by both parties, you can start developing the game. You have to be very clear with your game designer that the prototype that he has, you expect it to be, of course, in a mostly final state, but it is not yet ready to be published. So you will have to bring your eye of publisher, you have to bring your critical eye, and you have to push the designer to bring the game development to the next level and to maybe review some aspect of the game design as well. This is very much a collaborative effort, so you have to make sure that you see things on an eye level with the board game designer and that they are okay with the process. Some designers expect the game to be published exactly as they design it. Some publishers are looking for that. Personally, I don't. I think it's very important for the board game publisher to bring some added value to this process. So the first thing for me is to make sure about what the target audience for the game will be. Is this a game for the core market being the geeks, the alpha geeks, the players that like very complex games and that are very much into the hobby aspect of things? Or will it be a game for the mass market or for the families? Do you want to make your game for a younger audience or for an adult audience? So all of these things are very important because they will guide you to the decisions along the way. Once you know exactly the audience you want to target the game for, you have to review all of the mechanisms of the game with the game designer and make sure all of the mechanism, all of the engine of the game is actually pushing the game towards this audience and towards the goal that the game is supposed to have. Sometimes you will find that some ancillary mechanisms into the games are better weeded out so that the game is more pure and more closer to the main focus of the game. In other cases, on the contrary, you will want to add a few mechanisms to elaborate the game and make it more complex and more rich and to have more replay value over time. So this will be very much dependent from game to game, and again, the target audience will guide you to this decision, and you will have to work hand in hand with the game designer for this. Once these decisions are made, you will have to make an art brief for the artist that will make all of the art for the game, and you will have to review that. Again, I strongly suggest that you do that with the game designer. You will have to review all of the ergonomy aspects of the game. It's very important when you look at the game that looking at the components, looking at the board, looking at the way the game is presented, you can have an idea of what the game is about and how it will play. Rob Daviau famously said, a good manual will only confirm what you learned from the game by just looking at the components. And so that is a goal that you should strive for, that the game is pretty much self-explanatory. Of course, complex Euro games will not be something that you can just look at and learn without reading the rules, that is very clear, but according to the kind of game you publish, and especially if you target the families and the mass market audience, you will want to have something that is very much self-explanatory with a lot of information on the board, on the component, on player aids and such things. So once you have a near final prototype, you need to test it with a lot of people, not only your inner circle, not only the inner circle of the game designer, but you have to actually go to a few conventions, to a few player meetings, to a few gatherings in your area, and show them the game as it is, and you have to watch them playing it. So you have to teach them the game, of course, you have to get them to play it, and when they are playing, you have to not play yourself, but to watch the player. And by watching the player, you will learn a lot about the mistakes you made and that you did not realize. If you see someone making a mistake very often, and you see a lot of people making the same mistake, then probably you should change the design to avoid that mistake to happen. If some aspects of the game are drawing out and the game feels too long to the gamers, then you should certainly change the design so that the game is more dynamic and a bit shorter. Maybe you will make some information hidden instead of open so that people are spending less time thinking about it and they must take a guess instead of calculating everything. This is, again, pretty much dependent from game to game, and it's part of the decisions you will have to make. Unfortunately, there are no hard and fast rules on how to do this. This is pretty much something that you will have to learn on the job. But the good thing is that since it's mostly related to game design, there are a lot of resources about it. So, and of course, there are also a lot of online resources such as Board Game Geek that has a lot of forums, the Board Game Designer Forum, and so on. So there are a lot of sources to learn about that. Once you have your finished prototypes, once the ergonomy is okay, you have to review the accessibility aspect of your game. Maybe colorblind people would not be able to play it the way you wanted to design it. So you have to make sure that you don't exclude people from playing your game just because of some of the decisions you made about the ergonomy of the game. These are quite easy to address, usually because over time you quickly learn that, okay, some of the colors are easily confused by colorblind people. If you put text that is too small, people that are less young will have difficulty to read it, and so they might not be able to play the game just because of that. So the accessibility is the second concern that you have. Once you have your final prototype, you know exactly how the game should look like, the ergonomy is squared up, you have to think about how much it will cost to produce. That is also a very important aspect, and I suggest you get some quotes for the manufacturer before you start asking for the art commissions, because if the manufacturer tells you that some of the decisions you have made will be very expensive, you may want to review that, and in turn it may change the size and the number of illustrations you will need from the artist. So it's really a back and forth process. The thing is usually to ask for quotes and to say, please be aware that the quote request may change. Then if you need to change, you put a new quote request and you ask for an update from the designer, from the artist and from the manufacturer. That is the very first part of the board game publishing process. The game development, you will want to make the game better, to process this hand in hand with the game designer, and to make sure that you have something that is finally ready to be illustrated so that you can commission the art and then to be produced. If you found this information useful, hit the like button. If you did not find it useful, hit the dislike button. If you want me to cover some aspect or you want to provide commentary, please use the comments. That is mostly welcome. And since this is not published on a very regular basis, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss the next episode.